This is Democracy Watch. Mark, we have some breaking news here as it relates to Donald Trump's ongoing attempt to get a bunch of law firms to capitulate. This order was challenged in court by another law firm. Can you explain what just happened?
Yeah, Donald Trump is now 0 for 3. Okay, so Donald Trump issued a series of executive orders against large law firms. First one against Perkins Coie, mostly because I had been a former partner there. Perkins Coie sued and they won. He then issued one against Jenner and Block, a big Chicago firm. They sued and they won. And now Wilmer Hale, a big Washington, D.C. firm that had been also targeted by Donald Trump, mostly because Bob Mueller, the former special counsel, had been a partner there. They sued and they won. And what's really astounding in all of these orders is just how clear-eyed the judges are that what Donald Trump has done is both illegal, unconstitutional, and outrageous.
And I want to dig into that exact thing. So I'm going to put an excerpt from the order right here on the screen. Taken together, the provisions constitute a staggering punishment for the firm's protected speech, ! The order is intended to, and does in fact, impede the firm's ability to effectively represent its clients! And in fact, there are 25 exclamation points throughout this entire ruling handed down by the judge. And so how unusual is it for a judge to kind of convey this kind of this kind of language in their rulings?
Oh, I think it's unprecedented. I mean, I can't think off the top of my head of a judicial order that has included more than one exclamation
Yeah.
point. I mean, the fact is, judicial decisions are usually quite measured. They are usually written in a way that suggests there is a good faith dispute between the parties, that the judge is weighing each side, and then coming down with a ruling. That is not at all how this ruling reads. And it's, by the way, not how any of the prior ones have read either. This judge is angry. This judge is, beyond frustrated that the legal system itself is under attack, that the rule of law is under attack, and that these are not close questions. And, this is doing no favors for Donald Trump. It's doing no favors for Pam Bondi or the Department of Justice, that they continue to show up in judges' courtrooms and making arguments that the judges don't just find wrong, don't just find illegal, but find outrageous that they're even being offered.
To that point, I do want to put another section from the judge's ruling on the screen here. The cornerstone of the American system of justice is an independent judiciary and an independent bar willing to tackle unpopular cases, however daunting. The Founding Fathers knew this. Accordingly, they took pains to enshrine in the Constitution certain rights that would serve as the foundation for that independence. Little wonder that in the nearly 250 years since the Constitution was adopted, no executive order has been issued challenging these fundamental rights. And so I guess the same question here applies. What is the judge trying to say by offering up what seems to me, and I think you would agree here, some pretty aggressive pushback against what this administration is doing? I think pretty unprecedented pushback against what this administration is doing.
Yeah, look, I'm going to go on record. If this was a different administration, if we had a legacy media that approached Donald Trump the way they have approached every other president, this decision would kick off a political firestorm. It would kick off talk of impeachment against Donald Trump, because over the course of now 3 judicial decisions, and almost certainly a fourth one is on its way in the last one of these cases, these judges have said that Donald Trump's actions are not just illegal. They don't just foot fault over it. They are grossly illegal. They are unprecedentedly illegal. They are an affront to the Constitution. And, my question back to you, Brian, is where is the legacy media over this? I mean, I just got to say, I just lived through 2 weeks of, infomercials for Jake Tapper's book running on the legacy media. And God bless him, I understand they want to sell books, but I think at one point he said that Joe Biden being president or running for re-election might be a bigger scandal than Watergate. Well, by that standard, this is the biggest scandal in American history, then, that he issued these executive orders against these law firms, and good for the judges for standing up.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would offer as an answer to that is that the media kind of bakes into the cake Trump's corruption. And so long as he just meets that low bar that he set for himself, which is that he's going to engage in corruption, he's going to issue illegal and unconstitutional executive orders, this is the kind of stuff he's going to traffic in. So long as he doesn't surprise anybody, then they're not going to cover it in any way the same way that a Democrat would. This is the whole, like, man bites dog, right? That's surprising. That's going to get people to pay attention. But nothing that Donald Trump is doing is surprising because we've just come to accept the fact that he is going to traffic in this kind of corruption. That shouldn't mean that the media absolves him. Yes, it means that we're not surprised when he does it, but that doesn't mean that you absolve him when he's in the midst of it. And yet that's what we're seeing right now. I don't know whether it's because, the billionaire owners of these outlets are too afraid to get on his bad side because they have other interests in front of the White House. I don't know whether it means that they're afraid of some retribution in some other way, or if they're just not getting the clicks that they need by virtue of focusing on stuff that's really going to hold Trump's feet to the fire. But look, all of that underscores the need for people like you, and I know that you just started your YouTube channel, Democracy Docket, which I watch on a daily basis now. Highly recommend for everybody watching to elevate the voices that we need to elevate right now, which include Marx and his teams. Please subscribe to Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Let's help build up this progressive media ecosystem. Doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. Just hit the subscribe button. Mark, I want to dig into the fact that we still do have these law firms like Paul Weiss is the one that we've spoken about the most, which did opt to capitulate. And so now we're in the third case where Trump's executive order targeting these law firms has been overturned, not just overturned, but really destroyed at the hands of yet another judge. And so what does that say about the law firms that did opt to capitulate in light of the fact that they're doing so based on an illegal premise?
Yeah, look, I think the sentiment has really turned around this. I mean, at the time that Paul Weiss capitulated, you and I were very critical. Other independent media were critical, but a lot of the legacy media bought into this idea that, well, this was a savvy effort by Paul Weiss to cut a deal and not alienate Donald Trump. And yeah, it might not be totally savory, but it was super smart. I think it has actually turned out to totally be the other way around. The fact is, Paul Weiss right now looks completely neutered and ineffectual. And who the hell wants to hire a law firm that is neutered and ineffectual? You have judge after judge lauding these law firms who stood up and fought. And just recently over the weekend, we read about 4 senior lawyers at Paul Weiss leaving that law firm. Now, whether they were leaving entirely because of this or for other reasons, it certainly is giving more evidence and support to the notion that the Paul Weisses of the world made a fool out of themselves and are now paying the consequences of it. The other thing is, I think it is also really, along with Harvard standing up, really built momentum that there is a benefit to standing up, that people admire institutions that stand up to Donald Trump, and so I hope that this does redound to the benefit of the Wilmer Hells and the like.
Do you think that we're going to see something? There was some reporting about the prospect of a kind of NATO among universities where if he goes after one, if he tries to attack their tax-exempt status, that it's an attack on all of these institutions. Do you think that we're going to see something similar, or are we already seeing kind of a coalescing among the law firms where, if we have an instance where Trump goes after one of these law firms with a blatantly unconstitutional executive order, that it'll be viewed as an attack on all of them, and just like with any union membership, with any collective bargaining, all of them together going up against Donald Trump is going to be a hell of a lot more effective than kind of an every man for himself mentality.
Yeah, I don't know whether or not it will inspire collective action. I will say this, it has already inspired collective shame. And shame is a powerful motivation for professionals and for law firms. And there is a shame associated with what Paul Weiss did. There is a shame associated with what Skadden did. And I think that every time these courts rule in this way, it amplifies the shamefulness of capitulating to Donald Trump. Every time Donald Trump says he's going to deploy these law firms that have capitulated to him to, do unsavory pro bono at his beck and call, it makes it less likely that another law firm is going to capitulate. And I think it's important, even as we just saw in this most recent order involving Wilmer Hale, the fact that the judges keep pointing out the terms by which Paul Weiss capitulated, including the fact that it essentially denounced or sat by as Donald Trump denounced one of its former partners. I mean, there's something unbelievably pathetic on the part of Paul Weiss's management to have this, to have done that and now have this recounted over and over again.
That I find that so interesting because I feel like we're in a moment where obviously among Republicans, their superpower is their shamelessness. I wrote a book about the shamelessness of the Republican Party. So this has been a recurring theme
Yeah,
here.
it's on my book.
I see that.
Right here. If you haven't already, everybody, I mean, this is no joke. Like, I mean, we didn't play, like, this is a book I have on my bookshelf because I read it. I have endorsed people to buy it, and I periodically consult back to it. There are passages in it that if you could see, I have marked up because it's a really important book. So if you haven't already read it, please make sure you go out and buy it. And I'm sure Brian can include a link or something for it.
Well, I appreciate that, and I will. I'll include a link in the post description. But what I'm curious about here is, we're talking about the fact that shame is an important tool among these law firms. And I guess I'm just a bit incredulous because we've seen how the Republicans can comport themselves with no shame whatsoever. I mean, we have God knows how many clips of Marco Rubio saying one thing in 2017, 2018, 2019, and now him saying the exact opposite. We have Pete Hegseth saying one thing, in 2017, him saying the exact opposite. And so the fact that these people will just do and say whatever they have to say to protect themselves and consolidate power for themselves and gain proximity to power for themselves, that has really shown itself to the nth degree with this administration and this Republican Party. And so is there still shame, at least within the legal profession, where that is something that actually moves people? And I ask that because we've seen so many instances where that's kind of lost its potency. You can't get a Republican to feel some shame about how they've completely flip-flopped on a position just to help themselves politically. That's kind of like a quaint concept of the past, at least in politics. And so when you say that it's still a potent tool in law, that the cynic in me has trouble believing that it's really a potent tool anywhere.
Yeah, so it's a specific kind of shame, and I should be clear about this. Lawyers like to think that they are tough-minded, they are smart, they're aggressive, they are beating out everybody else, not because they were lucky, not because they, were born on third base, but because they earned it. Like there's a lot of bravado, particularly in big law and big firm management. So when I say that it is shame, it is that every day, if you're a partner at Paul Weiss, you wake up and read that lawyers at other law firms are fighting and winning, and you and your law firm are being cited as suckers,
right?
As people who sucked up to Donald Trump, as people who were not smart, who were not tough, who were not able to fight. And so that's what I mean when I say shame. It is a particular kind of professional shame in an industry where that is very important to the psychology of what makes lawyers fight every day and also what makes clients hire them. I mean, we've already seen some instances of clients leaving some of the capitulating firms. And like I said, we just saw 4 litigators leave Paul Weiss to go start their own law firm. And I think that there is a part of it that's like, you hire a law firm like a Paul Weiss, like a Skadden Arps, because you want the toughest bulldog you can get in the courtroom. Well, right now, those law firms don't look like they've got bulldogs. They look like they've got a bunch of puppies wetting themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, and also underscores the fact that you and your team have been on the front lines of this fight, obviously not doing anything near capitulating. And so again, a small step that we all can take on the outside to support Mark and his team and their efforts is to subscribe to that YouTube channel, Democracy Docket. I'll put that link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Again, let's help amplify the voices of the people who are actually doing the fighting on the front lines where it matters most. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.